Welcome to the Deep Dive. So today we're going deep into the life and the really complex legacy of actor Michael Madsen. He passed away Thursday morning, July 3rd, 2025, age 67. And we want to get beyond just the headlines, really unpack who he was.
Yeah, absolutely. And our goal here, is to kind of synthesize what we know from the sources, give you a full picture of his life, his huge career, and yeah, that complex legacy he leaves. What's really fascinating, I think, is how someone known for, well, very specific kinds of roles.
Right, the tough guy.
Exactly, how much more there often is. For Madsen, many knew that persona, but digging in, you find this deeply sensitive artist. He found real solace in writing poetry, pretty poignant stuff too, which is quite a contrast, isn't it? But maybe when you think about it, maybe that contrast actually fueled some of that iconic screen presence.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And yeah, we want to give you that quick but still thorough understanding.
Right.
Hopefully spark some aha moments.
Yeah.
Without drowning you in information. Keep it engaging, respect your time.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. Okay, so the initial reports, Madsen was found unresponsive in his Malibu home. The cause seems to have been cardiac arrest. That's what's being reported. His managers, Ron Smith and Susan Ferris, and his publicist, Liz Rodriguez, they confirmed the news. Their statement called him one of Hollywood's most iconic actors who will be missed by many, which feels accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at his body of work, I mean, it's kind of staggering. Over 300 movies, TV shows, 4 decades in Hollywood, according to IMDb, and even in smaller parts, bit roles. That unmistakable gruff voice, that intensity. He always stood out.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? How someone carves out that iconic status. How they become so memorable across just so many films, often without even being the main lead. It really speaks to a unique kind of presence, that voice, that look. It became his signature, didn't it? Audiences just instantly recognized him, even if he only had a few minutes on screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, when you think about that screen presence, it's easy to forget where he actually started. What did you find about his beginnings before Hollywood?
Oh, it's quite a story, actually. A lot of people probably don't realize this, but before the movies, he came from Chicago, and he was actually honing his craft at the famous Steppenwolf Theatre.
Oh, wow. Steppenwolf.
Yeah. And there's this really, quite moving story from Terry Kinney, one of the co-founders there. Kinney said Madsen was working as a car mechanic when he directed him in Of Mice and Men.
A mechanic. Seriously.
Yeah. And Kinney recalled how Madsen used to write him these long handwritten letters for years about how art saved his life.
Mm-hmm.
He said Madsen was just wonderful in that production and that he could see his future success from the outset. Really powerful stuff.
Wow. That's incredible. That early grit, art saving his life. It really connects to the intensity he brought later, doesn't it? And certainly leads into his most famous work, especially with Quentin Tarantino.
Definitely.
I mean, the defining role has to be Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs.
Mm-hmm.
That torture scene with the Steelers Wheel song stuck in the middle with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just burned into movie history.
Unforgettable.
Yeah.
And maybe uncomfortable, but yeah, unforgettable.
Right. And he worked with Tarantino again, significantly in Kill Bill Volume 2 and The Hateful Eight. Plus, so many other notable films. Sin City, Donnie Brasco, even that small part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He was always working. So, okay, beyond the voice and the intense stare we all remember, was there more to his creative side? Did he do other things besides acting?
Oh, absolutely. And this is, I think, where it gets really interesting, reveals that multifaceted side. A lot of people have no idea he was a published poet.
Really? Poetry?
Yeah. Collections like Burning in Paradise, Expecting Rain. And his reps even said his poetry, quote, reflects the same gritty realism and emotional undercurrent that defines his acting. So it seems like that same core artistic drive, just found a different outlet, maybe a more introspective one.
That's fascinating. Quite a contrast to the tough guy roles.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only poetry.
No. He was also a pretty accomplished photographer, and he produced some independent projects too. And what's really telling, if you kind of connect the dots, is that he kept creating right up until the end. His managers mentioned he had several feature films in the works, Resurrection Road, Concessions, Cookbook for Southern Housewives.
Wow, still going.
Yeah, and he was apparently getting ready to release a new book, Tears for My Father, Outlaw Thoughts and Poems. It was still being edited, so this wasn't someone just, resting on past achievements. That creative drive was constant.
It really seems like creativity was his lifeline, in a way. But like the characters he played sometimes, his own life, well, it wasn't simple. It had its shadows. And some of that was public. He himself talked about making mistakes.
That's right. I think it was back in 2020 at his handprint ceremony,
Right.
the TCL Chinese Theater in LA. He gave this speech and he reflected on his path. He said something like, I could have been a bricklayer. I could have been an architect. I could have been a garbage man. I could have been nothing, but I got lucky. I got lucky as an actor. And it was in that same speech, which was mostly aimed at his wife, Deanna Morgan, that he mentioned making mistakes in his life, hinting at struggles.
And some of those struggles, well, they ended up in the public record. There's the DUI charge in 2019. He pleaded no contest. And it was significant because it was within 10 years of another DUI. He got 4 days in jail, 5 years probation.
Right.
Then in 2022, a $500 citation for misdemeanor trespassing. And the context there is just devastating.
Yeah.
It was only about a month after his son, Hudson, died by suicide. He was only 26.
Just awful, unimaginable.
Yeah. And then 2 years after that trespassing incident, he was arrested again. Misdemeanor domestic battery charge this time. Though his representative said he was released after what they called a disagreement between Michael and his wife.
It really makes you pause, doesn't it? Thinking about that gap between the public image, the roles he played, and the obviously deep personal battles he must have been fighting, especially losing a child like that, combined with these public legal issues.
Yeah.
It just paints a picture of immense turmoil, It really highlights how complex people's lives are, especially when they're lived under that kind of spotlight.
Despite all that, he is survived by his wife, Deanna Morgan, and their 2 sons, Calvin and Luke. And he also had 2 other sons from his previous marriage to Eugenie Bizignano Max and Christian. And they're both actors too, actually. So, okay. When we put all this together, where does it leave us? What does it all mean? Our deep dive really shows Michael Madsen's legacy is, well, it's truly complex, isn't it? Multifaceted. He was undeniably that iconic actor, the voice, the presence, but also, clearly, a dedicated artist. That love for poetry, photography, and as we've seen, a man who navigated some pretty significant personal trials right alongside his public career.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of exploration, it helped us get beyond just the news alert or the headline. It helps us try to understand the depth, maybe the contradictions in a person's life. Knowledge is most valuable when it's understood, right? And seeing the whole picture of someone like Madsen, the highs, the creative outlets, the struggles, it definitely enriches how we understand Hollywood and maybe just the human experience itself.
So maybe something for you to think about is this. What stands out to you about how Michael Madsen's artistic sensitivity, that side of him, and his personal struggles might have shaped that iconic presence we all recognize? And what does looking at it this way maybe teach us about the complex lives of public figures?